So there's been a lot of excitement in the psychedelic industry this year, from legislation to drug development occurring, and also a lot of sentiment that's occurred in terms of social media. So if legislation in different jurisdictions being passed is any indication of sentiment, it's safe to say that psychedelic medicine is developing as a bipartisan issue. So I brought James Lanthier, the CEO of Mindset Pharma, with us once again in order to talk about some of the developments here and also some insights into some of the developments with his company as well. Hey, James, how are you?
Great to see you, Dwayne. I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing pretty well. I'm doing pretty well. Thanks for joining us. So one of the things I've noticed is that you often identify Mindset as a bio company, a biotech company at its core. So just looking at Mindset as a biotech company, how does it differentiate itself from other companies within the space that are developing psychedelic medicines?
That's a great question. I think that there were really two really distinct ways in which mindset kind of saw the development of the market, and the role for a company like ours, really differently than I'd say most of the other groups in the market, and kind of the early folks did. And I think those two areas would be, number one, we were a believer from the beginning that, although the medical psychedelic market had enormous growth potential, it would really look nothing like cannabis. And I think the cannabis market was probably the early model that a lot of the early folks initially kind of looked to. Our view was that psychedelics would be a medical market, and that kind of the wellness approach, there may be something to that in the long term, but really in the short to medium term, the major development of the market would be along medical lines. So that means advancing drugs along established regulatory pathways, and proving out their efficacy, and in treating a variety of different neuropsychiatric indications. And in a medical market, in any segment of the overall pharmaceutical market, what's really important to get the involvement of major pharmaceutical companies and major institutional investors that support them are intellectual property rights. So around drugs, every drug space eventually goes generic, but that's not how drug markets typically start. They start with new drugs that have really strong, what you call, composition of matter, intellectual property rights. So our view with Mindset was, pharma is going to get involved in the space. Let's build a business for where this space is going to head, which is with new drugs. So that was not the focus of most of the companies in the space at the beginning. Most of the companies in the space really were focused on dealing with formulations of existing known drugs, so formulations of psilocybin or other known drugs. And what we really thought is that those are the data coming out of those trials. It's great, and it really validates the use of psychedelics as therapeutics, but that's not going to be where pharma is going to focus. Ultimately, the market will just naturally shift towards new drugs they'll have really strong intellectual property rights and have been differentiated in comparison to the old drugs. So that was our focus from the very beginning. We've never been in clinics or growing mushrooms or functional mushrooms or anything like that. Our whole focus has been, let's apply the tools of biotechnology, medicinal chemistry, behavioral pharmacology to try to identify and develop new psychedelic medications that ultimately we can partner with pharma on to bring to market for patients.
Right. And speaking of partnerships and drug development, you've recently made a deal with CYBIN. So can you shed some color on that deal and what are the mutual benefits therein?
Absolutely. So our whole strategy has been, let's let's do the really hard upfront scientific work to try to identify new drugs and develop them up to a certain point. And then we know what we're good at. We're good at early stage science. It's a whole other set of activities and skills and capital that you need to take a drug all the way to into patients. And so let's partner with groups that have that focus. And earlier in the year, we announced our collaboration with Otsuka, which is a very large pharma company. With CYBIN, there was an area that was covered by one of our patent applications that we thought might be interesting to them. It was a set of compounds that, given what they talked about before, what they were working on, that we thought could be interesting to them. They were compounds that we weren't working on, and essentially, that's how this licensing deal was really born. Was out of those discussions, and I think it's a win-win. Again, these are compounds we weren't working on. If CYBIN develops them and they have a good development organization, then great. That's good for CYBIN, and that's good for Mindset. We don't have to do anything or invest in those compounds any further in order to reap the benefits. So I think it's a real win, and it's also a great example of how Mindset's really been able to begin to commercialize our portfolio of innovations.
Right, excellent, excellent. And getting back to Mindset's drug development specifically, you've recently announced 2 lead clinical candidates, so MSP 2020 and MSP 2003. So how does this add to your library? And if you could describe exactly what those drugs are and their potential benefits, that'd be excellent.
Sure. So these are some drug candidates that come out of our collaboration with Otsuka. We're collaborating with Otsuka on 2 of our families, and at a high level, these can't fit the family 2 drug candidates are fit a certain profile of being, at least based on the data that we have to date, having a really strong effect size. So we expect them to induce a significant psychedelic experience, but they're exhibiting a significantly shorter duration than psilocybin. So the duration of the psilocybin trip is really seen to be potentially one of the impediments to the adoption of psychedelic assisted psychotherapy. 6 to 8 hours is a really long time to have to spend in clinic in a physician's office. So this family offers a potential solution to that. This was a really big milestone in Mindset's overall development. So IND enabling studies, if you don't know what they are, there's a certain set of prescriptive safety studies that you need to do in order to get the FDA or to most other health regulators to accept you moving a new drug into human trials. And so drug development gets increasingly expensive as you go along the process. And so these are major studies to commit to. And simply, we've announced this partnership back in January. We've done a lot of work to get to this point, and so I think it's really a great kind of milestone in our collaboration with Otsuka, and a great kind of statement around our confidence in the program that we've selected a lead and a backup to, and they're currently now in IND enabling studies. So obviously the next plan with those compounds would be to get them through IND enabling studies and file an application with the FDA for human trials.
Right. And, once again, you mentioned that obviously drug development is very expensive. It's definitely a pressing issue that you see in the press. So over the summer, we've had some companies that unfortunately have had to shut down. We had one major company that had to cut back on its IP pipeline in order to focus more narrowly on their drugs. So, how does Mindset find that balance between, fiduciary responsibility and then also engaging in, very quick and very intensive drug development?
Well, you're absolutely right. It's the kind of work that can, I think, you see it with lots of other companies. It can really kind of get away from them. I think where Mindset's been successful is that we're very much our scientific founding team have real expertise in early stage drug development. This is what they've done really their whole careers, both on the chemistry side, medicinal chemistry side, and on the behavioral pharmacology side, where we do the work to try to understand what are the different signals of early stage signals of like, do these drugs work? Are they safe? Before we, pick one to take into, human trials. So this is what, our team is really good at. And then, secondly, I think our collaboration with Otsuka is a huge leg up for us because they provide the funding for the development of those two families on a non-dilutive basis. And so and that's been, a huge advantage for us as, we go through this, we're going through this, current period of turbulence in the public markets. It really insulates us. It really insulates us in a big way from that, and has meant that we've been able to continue advancing our programs without, diluting our shareholders, or as you see with some of these companies having to, really curtail or shut down their programs. So it's just an enormous advantage for us, and also getting to really leverage Otsuka's internal expertise on these programs is huge as well.
Right, exactly. And yes, I was going to ask you about that as well in terms of leveraging strategic partnerships. Do you see the market more going in that direction in terms of consolidation and companies getting together and sort of specializing in what they're good at and what they're not good at? I just wanted to get your views on that as well.
Yeah, I think when it becomes more harder or more expensive to access capital, that really forces companies to focus on where the easy the likeliest opportunity is for them to create value. And that's why you see a lot of great companies that do kind of come out of tougher times in the public markets. I think this is really when like the diamonds are forged, so to speak. Mindset's always had a really specific strategic focus. We're going to focus on what it is that we're good at, which is early stage drug discovery. We knew that if we did this with the right team at the right time, we'd be able to essentially, carve for ourselves a really strong intellectual property position in this class of drugs that have been neglected by, pharma for, decades. And I think we've done that, and we've been really, really, focused on continuing to execute along that pathway and not get distracted by other opportunities to try to chase, investor interest in adjacent businesses or anything like that. This is early stage drug discovery. There's still a huge amount of opportunity. We keep learning more about this class of drugs as we do more discovery. So, and the other thing I think is that what we're now seeing is like lots and lots of, I think pharma is definitely coming. Obviously they're already here with Otsuka, but I think there'll probably be a lot more activity in the space over the next little bit, and I think that will be good for everybody.